Hello, so this is going to be the concluding video for the camera series, auto camera adjustment series, system series. So far we have the camera system that kind of adjusts the rotation as it goes, depending on the movement direction and the camera forwards direction, and depending on how big of a difference the angles are between the character's movement direction and the camera direction, facing direction, it adjusts itself. And also we have like the defaulting system, where after some amount of time the camera just returns back to its original position and rotation. And then while we're moving the camera, we allow the player to have full control of the camera while they have some input into it. And if a certain amount of time has elapsed without any input controlling the camera, the adjustment system kicks in back again. For the video, I'm going to be addressing some minor bugs you'll probably be facing with these systems integrated together, working together and clashing together. And I'll be going over some suggestions that were given. One being the going back to, it's basically using a camera lag. So when the character does something, like a dash, I think the example was Genshin Impact. So when the character dashes, the camera kind of lags a bit, and then when the character stops moving, it kind of goes back to its original distance from the player character. And after that, I'll be addressing to one of the suggestions in the comments mentioning a target about a targeting system and how the camera kind of keeps hitting obstacles and clashing, making it difficult for the player to kind of get a proper view against the target. So first, there are some bugs here that's worth mentioning. I'm not really going to be going on over about how to exactly fix them, because obviously that depends on your game's needs. Depending on what your game to be and how you want the camera to behave in certain situations, obviously there's going to be millions of different ways to implement them. But basically, you just need to add a conditional check here. So for example, one bug I've noticed is while the defaulting is going, it kind of stops the auto adjustment. You saw the auto adjustment kicking in a little delayed. So right here again, defaulting starts, and then if I go back here, it stops, right? Because they're kind of zeroing themselves out, and it's not the auto adjustment isn't stopping instantly. So for these kind of issues, you probably want to have, I mean, you might even want to go think of using an enum maybe, but for now the quickest fix for these situations would be just to kind of have a boolean that's set when the camera adjustment, the auto adjustment kicks back in, or when it's defaulting. For example, let's see, set start camera defaulting. Here you could have a boolean here, say, let's say, for example, is defaulting. And then we can just have it like set to true here, set to false here, and then while the camera is defaulting, we prevent the auto adjustment from happening, which is, I can find it here, yeah, just here. We can just add another condition here, can auto adjust. Instead of that, we can also have the is defaulting, and then if this is, let's say, not boolean, not true, and then we can just maybe add a end connect these together and then make a new condition for the auto adjust to actually start working. Or we can just simply use this and then set these values. Instead of having it as defaulting, maybe we can just set it to false. But I think that could lead to more issues because you have more. You might have to kind of. Yeah, I think I would just leave these two separate for now. Because I think if I just have one thing controlling everything, there could be different situations where you actually need a different, condition. So yeah, but like the gist of it is you just need another boolean or another value to use as a conditional check and prevent these from interrupting each other as needed. So that's the small bug you might want to take a look again after following after following the tutorials. You might want to figure out what you want your camera, how you want your camera to behave in the game, and kind of find a prevent them from interrupting each other and what's not. And so for this, there's an example I've made. I'm just gonna disconnect the controller. It's kind of causing some control drifts. My Xbox is a bit old, so it's causing some problems. I'll just use my mouse and keyboard for now. So here, I created a very simple dash system just so you can see that it's working. So let me just turn this off. So here, I have a dash. So what we want to do is when the character is dashing, we can see that the camera is perfectly following it in a set distance. But to add a bit more, okay, what's going on here? Whoops, I think something's wrong with my PC, but let me just reconnect my. Yeah, it was my controller. I had it moving around, and at that point I disconnected it, and I think it just kept feeding in movement input. Okay. Back on track. Sorry about that. Again, while we're dashing, we just have these weird. Not weird. Sorry, it's about the Xbox controller. Dashing, we have the camera moving at a set distance. We want the camera to kind of lag behind it, and as the term suggests, we want it to lag. And inside the spring arm component here, it's called camera boom by default inside a third-person character. You can search for lag, and if you just enable this, it does pretty much what you'd need. So here we'll draw debug lag markers just for the sake of being able to see how it works. And we'll set this to a very low speed so it's easier to see. And then lag max distance, we'll just set it to 0 so it lags infinitely. So here we can see. So the lower your camera lag speed is, the longer it takes for the camera to catch up with the character. So it goes back to the original position the camera boom is attached, which is in this case the capture component's world location. So here, if I dash, of course it's gonna get further. So this is a bit ridiculous. So we'll just add some values to it. So maybe we want it to lag at a speed of 10, and then we dash. See, it kind of goes far, lags behind. But then after some time has passed, it's able to catch up to the character. And we saw the issue with the 0. For example, if we have a 1 and then if the lag max distance is set to 0, like the camera can just like go way off the field of view of the camera. So one thing you can also use is the camera lag max distance. If it's set to 100, basically, if I just show it here, this is going to be lagging only up to this distance. So even if the camera lag speed, this lag speed is super slow, it's never going to go off this distance to where it's attached to. So go back. We'll show this set to 100, the distance to 100, and see how it goes. See, so lag speed is super low, but then no matter how far the character goes away, the camera always keeps this distance to the character. So if I were to dash, it still keeps that distance. It clamps it to that distance, and we're able to smoothly go back to the character's to the camera's attached location. And that's pretty much what you would need for that. And the values are pretty wonky right now here, so you can try and adjust these parameters so to your liking, so it matches what you desire in your game. And for the rotation lag, for me personally, I don't think it's a very good feeling. I think for more realistic games where you kind of want some inertia to the rotation of the cameras, you might want it, but for a snappy feeling, I would prefer not to have this on. But it pretty much works in the same way as the translation lag, which is the location lag. So it lags with the rotation also lags a bit, but also for this, depending on what you want your game to be like, you can use it or choose not to use it. So the dash, this very slow lag, it goes back to the character. And if that's annoying, you can just if the debug markers are annoying, you can just turn it off. So that's it for the character moving. After the character moves, the camera moving back to its attached location feature. Okay, and on to the next, which is I set up a sorry, this is just my source control, never mind that. So here I just set up a very simple targeting testing map. So here I'm basically just shooting an array of a sphere trace to just check anything on screen and just kind of look at it and start doing this targeting movement. So I'm assuming the problem is when it's getting too close to the walls, you kind of like can't see your character maybe. And before like we approach this in a blueprint scripting manner, I think it's more of a game design issue at this point, because as many Dark Souls games, I see a lot of people, I think also in like especially Sekiro, a lot of people I saw a lot of reviews complaining about this in Sekiro, because I think the characters there, the enemies there are much more speedy, so to say. They're much faster and they get close to you really fast, and you kind of dash, and when you're parrying, you're knocked back a little bit when you're parrying or blocking, so that also causes the character to kind of get pushed back to a wall. In this case, I would think one approach would be, so here I actually did something to prevent it from like clipping. Let me just get back to the character. Yep, here. So what I did here is have the camera boom location located at the top of the head. So if the camera is hitting a wall here on this side, the camera's boom is going to adjust itself to where it collides, right? But then if it collides, let's say the wall is here, it's going to be colliding, the camera's location will be set here. So there's nothing really obscuring your view while it's here, but then if you set it just to be exactly in the position of the capsule component, the issue is pretty obvious. You're going to spend a lot of your time just clipping through the mesh and not being able to see much, or seeing too much of the inside of the mesh, and just it seems awful, right? So I think this could be one approach. You can kind of alleviate the issue with the clipping and not being able to see your target. Have it to the head. Let me just put this back down. Yep, like that. So you can kind of still see your head bobbing around, but it gives a much better perspective. Like, you're able to see at least more of the enemies and your environment than having it completely attached to your camera, your capsule. And another thing I think would be, this is a very simple, so is modifying the material parameters. So here, like a lot of games, even in Genshin Impact, like I gave an example, I talked about it just earlier, but even in Genshin Impact, they have it's a third-person game, right? So obviously it has some places where the camera gets really close up to the character, and it's just making the to prevent the character mesh completely obscuring the view. You can also go into the materials, and just for demonstration's sake, I'll just use a very simple dither. Add this to, let's say, the opacity mask. Then here, then we'll convert this to a parameter. We'll just call it like dither. We'll just call it dither. And then we'll hook it up to the alpha threshold. Default value to 1. Save, apply. And then here, like if you want to make it more dynamic, I would just put it on a tick maybe. Yeah, we have it here, faithful. This is, no need to worry about this. Let's say you can, let's get the distance. Get distance to the camera. Oh wait, we'll just get world distance. Get world location, I mean. Distance. Let's see. Yeah, this one. From the camera to, let's say, just the actor location. Then let's just see if this is working as intended. So what I'm trying to do is get the distance between the camera and the attached parent, which is the capsule component, and then depending on the distance we'll add the percentage. So here we get 100 and all the way to 530 ish. So let's just say 500 to 100. We'll map range it. So map range clamp 100 to 500, and then from, if it's really close, you want it to dither, right? So if it's set to 0, it's going to be completely using, because in this case we're using the opacity mask. So if it's set to 0, it's going to be completely transparent. So here we're going to go from, when it's close, we'll go to, if it's completely, I mean, let's just go with 0.1 and 1, and then get the mesh, get scalar parameter value on materials. And this works for this case because they both inherit material mannequin. Here we'll just call dither, then return this and set that value to this. And let's just print this value. Okay, I think this should do the trick. So here you can see it starts dithering. So we click target, and while we're targeting we can kind of dither, so we can kind of focus more on what's going on in front of the character. And if we're using this method, I think we have more freedom to kind of, depending on, of course, it's always about what you want your game to be like what you want to have in your game in terms of the camera behavior. So if you just attach it to, you can also attach it to the capture component, and then here if we have this, you can set it and it can kind of do something like this. Yep. So you can still kind of see, but I think this is still pretty wonky. I personally, if I were to make a Souls-like game like that, I think I would pull this up a little, all the way up, and maybe to the back, maybe, if you like. Yeah, actually, let's try that. Here, go back here. And you also have to consider that it's not always about the player character itself, it's also about the enemies. Because one thing you'll notice in a Souls game is, because it's very important to be able to understand what the enemy character is doing. You know, they have even if they're telegraphing perfectly with their animations, if it's not visible at all, like it's pretty much pointless in terms of gameplay, game design, right? So you would normally have these characters much larger than the player character. So in a typical Souls game, even if it's like, you know, closed up, even you can see your character and also the enemy character at the same time, and since they're much bigger, it's easier to see them telegraphing. You can see if they're trying to attack, if they're doing a dodge or casting a spell or what's not. So just simply fixing the camera itself, it's always like that for any kind of game design, I think. It's not just about fixing one feature. You have to try to always take a holistic approach when you're trying to figure out the best way to enhance your gameplay. So, and I think, yeah, if that's an issue, maybe the issue isn't always just about the camera. It could be about maybe the environment, the lighting, like I just mentioned, the enemy NPCs visibility in terms of how big they are inside the environment, and etc. That's pretty much all I think I wanted to cover in this video. Thank you everyone for watching my videos, and I really hope it helps with everyone's game development journey, and I'll come back with something more different in the following videos. Thank you.